Hi, I'm Joyce Harper, Professor of Reproductive Science at the Institute for Women's Health at University College London. Welcome to Season 3 of my podcast, Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? This season, we'll be diving into topics that explore how to achieve good health and happiness. I'll be speaking with leading experts who will provide evidence-based advice and debunk some of the many myths around our health. Additionally, I'll be having conversations with individuals who bring unique perspectives through their lived experiences. In Season 3, we'll cover a diverse range of topics, including reproductive anatomy, inspiring female icons, chronic health conditions, factors that influence our well-being, and global women's health issues. I really hope you enjoy Season 3 of Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? Welcome to the second podcast in the mini-series on reclaiming joy. It's been a great pleasure today to speak to Di Westaway, Wild Women on Top, Trekking for Your Health. Di turned her midlife crisis into a fantastic story of adventures and helping other women. Di is the founder and chief adventure chick at Wild Women on Top. She is a global leader and award-winning woman of influence who has inspired her team to create life-changing adventures that get women walking in nature for their health. The event that changed her life was in 2000 when Di decided to climb the highest mountain in the Southern Hemisphere. She failed, but in 2001 a movement was born. Di skilled up and started trek training for women in her local national park. She trained coaches and clients, and together they traveled the world, hiking iconic trails such as Mt Kilimanjaro and Machu Picchu. In 2009, Di set up the charity Coastrek, which is now Australia's premier hiking challenge charity for women. You can choose to trek 50, 30, or 20 kilometres along Australia's most spectacular coastlines to get fit with friends and raise funds for various charities. Together, the community of 70,000 trekkers has raised more than $48 million for charity. And in 2018, Coastrek established a partnership with the Australian mental health charity Beyond Blue. In 2020, Di was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for services in women's health, fitness, and charity services. Welcome, Di.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Joyce.
It's a real pleasure. I'm really looking excited to our discussion today. So let's start. Tell me about your life and career before and after the climb that changed your life.
Well, my life before the climb that changed my life began as a child. I was a gymnast, so I spent most of my non-school hours in the back or front yard, either climbing trees or doing cartwheels or walking on my hands or making up dance gymnastics routines. So yes, it was a very active, very natural outdoor childhood, and that led to me because I knew instinctively that I just had to move my body. That led me into becoming a phys ed teacher because there was just really no alternative. I just went, that's what I have to do. I've got to teach physical education. So I studied physical education and dance and got a degree in that field and taught very bad physical education for a couple of years because I wasn't very good at throwing and catching balls. But I was lucky enough to get a job as a gymnastics coach in a private girls' school that had an elite gymnastics program. So I really just absolutely loved that because I was teaching all age girls who were choosing to be part of the gymnastics program, and we had a huge amount of fun. And from there, I got involved in the early days of the fitness industry when these things called gyms were just starting. And the first gym I worked at was actually a bowling alley that had a little room that they put some weights in. It was called the Golden Bowl, and you could go bowling or you could go and push weights around. So that was kind of in the early days of the fitness industry, and I just loved it. I was like, this is a really happy place. What a great thing that you can, help people get fitter and stronger. And so I left teaching to work full time in the fitness industry. And from there, got involved in professional aerobics and competitive aerobics, which is kind of, I guess, like a Jane Fondery kind of thing. But you're in very skimpy G-string leotards, and you do lots of jumping around and one-arm push-ups and in very very athletic, bouncy, jumpy activities. Did that for a number of years, and then decided it was time for a family, and that kind of changed things, because I was like, oh well, maybe I don't want to do this kind of thing anymore. Maybe I should go get a real job. So I went back to university and became a journalist, and worked in that field for about 5 years. But it was through that period of time that I discovered hiking. And it was through that period of time that I had my life changing adventure. So, do you want me to talk about my life changing adventure, or do you want me to skip straight to life after the adventure?
No, let's do it. Let's talk about what happened.
So what happened was I was approaching my 40th birthday, and for those of us who have reached that milestone, I think out of all of the milestone birthdays, 40 was for me the most traumatic. It was like the beginning of the end. I thought there isn't life after 40. It really is all over. At that point, I had two young children, and I had a gorgeous husband who was very unfortunately becoming an alcoholic. So life was very challenging at that time. And uh, a friend of a friend invited me out of the blue to go and climb the highest mountain in the Southern Hemisphere. And it just seemed like the most ridiculous thing to even consider, because I hadn't even been in a tent, let alone climbed a mountain. But I think I just was at that stage where I was like, maybe this could be my 40th birthday present. Like, maybe this could just be the mad thing that I do to celebrate 40. And of course, that was what ended up happening. My 40th birthday was a good excuse. My husband gave me permission to go away for 3 weeks without the kids, and I talked my best girlfriend into joining me, and we headed off into the wilderness. We did lots of training. It was all the wrong training, but we were pretty fit and pretty strong, and went to climb this incredible mountain in the Andes mountain range. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. We failed to get to the top, so I do talk about it now as being my big fat fail. But it's that classic, you turn that obstacle into an opportunity. That big failure, we came back, instead of being heroes at the surf club, we felt like we were complete failures. But of course we weren't, and for both of us, it became this vision of there is life after 40. And not only that, like there's other family people. There was mums and dads, people that we met on the mountain, who did this kind of thing, and every couple of years they'd go off and do this extreme adventure, and it was such an eye-opener. So for me, it led to me starting a little women's hiking group, which gradually evolved from this little hobby, where I was able to channel my lost physical education teaching skills into this outdoor training piece. And I created a program called Trek Training, and I gradually, the groups grew until I left my day job as a radio producer to full-time work on my business. So that business then developed into a group of women that wanted to climb the seven summits, which is the highest mountain on every continent. And it was a very small, intimate group of women who had their lives completely transformed by the camaraderie that came with, meeting up 3 times a week, training really hard, getting really strong, getting into nature, and juggling all of the things that you have as a midlife mum with children and work and all of that kind of thing, to be able to devote your spare time to doing these extreme adventures, which we did for probably about 15 years. But along the way, I realised that this little model I'd created wasn't going to be able to be sustaining me as a business idea. And so I was kind of, I guess, searching for a way to reach more than 150 women in Sydney. I wanted thousands of women, and I ended up creating a coastal hike that was something that would reach all the women in Sydney, or not all the women, but obviously I would have liked it to, but that appealed to women because they didn't have to travel to the Andes, or they didn't have to travel to Nepal. They could, within a short distance of driving from their home, do this big, long, challenging hike. And also, we invited them to raise money for a charity. So, this event, which is now called Coastrek, is a long distance hike in teams, where you get together with your girls, you go training a couple of times a week for 3 or 4 months, and you prepare for this big long hike. You do it all together, all in one day. We get up to 4,000 people, mostly women, hiking from anywhere from 20 to 100 kilometres, and we've raised millions of dollars for charity. So it was that piece, the Coast Trek event series, that came out of this little trek training group that actually allowed me to scale a business and to scale a women's hiking community, to making a huge impact, not just on those women that were hiking, but on the charities that we raised money for.
That's such an inspiring story, and I believe I've seen on your website that you talk about views, giggles, friends, chocolate, champagne. Is that right? Did I find that somewhere?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Look, when you're tempting women to do something that's a bit scary, or go out in the dark with a 25-kilo backpack on, and walk through the bush with spiders, and we're all scared. If you tell them there's a homemade cake and a cup of hot chocolate on a cliff top, you've got
Yes.
a much greater chance of getting them there. And so it's a really holistic view of health, where would we be without beautiful food? You have to have beautiful food, beautiful coffee, and beautiful cacao, and be in beautiful places with beautiful people. So yeah, it's not just about fitness. It's as much about the camaraderie and the quality of life activities that are all wrapped up in that beautiful package.
And tell me a bit more about the women. So, what's the age range, and what's their experience? So, when they come to you, have some of them been doing a lot of walking already? What's their background?
Yes, it's a real mixture, and there really are two groups. The group of women that train 3 times a week together, that all live fairly locally, that do the big global adventures. Those women are generally aged more from 40 to 60, which obviously was the age I was when I started that group. The women that are drawn to Coast Trek tend to be a little bit younger, really 35 to 55, and it's only like a 5-year distinction, but it does seem to be that you can carve time out of family time to do a 12-week training program and do a 50 to 100 kilometre hike with your friends, when you've got primary school age children. But to train for Everest Base Camp, for example, then you tend to be the women tend to be a little bit older. They usually got high school age kids, high school or university age kids, and it just skews slightly that way. So, I'm passionate about all women, and my passion for teenage girls and helping them is probably going to lead me down a path of what can we create for teenage girls. But at the moment, it really is women 35 to 65 now.
I just think it's fabulous because it ticks so many boxes for me. So you're exercising, you're outside in nature, and you're with friends and a community. So this
Yes.
must be a really life-changing event for many of the women that join you on these coast treks.
It is completely transformational, but you have to be very careful because it can put pressure on marriages,
Yeah.
relationships, because I talk about it as a bit like, guys play golf and women go hiking. It's got a very similar kind of feel to it. It's a secret women's business community, and sometimes men can feel alienated. So, yes, it can be a delicate balancing act. But to me, it goes back to our most primitive nature as women. And I think historically, our ancestors were very much had this tribe of women. In fact, I think, and I'm no anthropologist, but it just seems instinctive that a tribe of women is really at the heart of our health and well-being. And yes, don't we love men? And obviously we need men in our lives for for procreation of children and bringing up of children, and that's a really important thing. But I think that those female friendships, they're the ones that are sustaining and they're lifelong. The men come and go. I've had a husband for 25 years. I've had a few partners since. I've got a lovely one now. But, just it feels like, but not the women, the women are for life, and they have really sustained me through all of life's ups and downs for the last 25 years. It's been a very special, very, very special community for me, and I know for all of them.
Yeah, I loved your comment that men play golf and women go hiking. So in the UK, I'm a wild swimmer, and we're very
Yes.
aware that the swimming community is mainly women. I've
Yes.
got numbers, but we're the groups I go in is often only women or maybe one or two men. And what we say in England is that women go wild swimming and men go cycling.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, no, I can see that too. They do. They do a similar thing. Maybe that's even a better example. But if they're more drawn to that. Yeah, yeah. And I think there's another key difference, which is something that we've played into very strongly with our Coastrek event series, because we get 90% women doing that event. And it's not that we don't include men, and it's not that men don't like the event, but they don't like it enough to keep coming back year after year, because generally men, when they're hiking, they sort of tend to hike in silence and just want to get there, whereas women want to talk endlessly from the moment they step foot on the trail to the moment they step off, and they don't care how long it takes to get there. They just want to have beautiful views, have beautiful coffee and cake, and have a beautiful conversation. So for women, it's about the journey. For men, it's about the destination, and that's obviously a generalization. But it is an interesting, because I have hiked with all female groups and I've hiked with mixed groups, and to be honest, I really prefer hiking with women, because uh, they don't leave anyone behind. It wouldn't occur to a woman to leave anyone behind, but it seems that wouldn't occur to a man to not leave anyone behind, because they're a bit slow and I can't wait for you, darling. So I think there are some things in life that where there is a genetic difference in how we enjoy things, and I think hiking is probably one of those.
yeah, we've thought about the differences as well when we've talked about swimming, because swimming, if you while swimming in the UK, it's certainly better to have a little bit more body fat. It's pretty cold,
Yes.
so that is an advantage.
Oh,
And yeah, but there are very slim people who wild swim, and then there are obviously women who cycle as well. But I
yes.
was out driving on Sunday where I live, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And literally, there were just these big hordes of men with their lycra on their bikes,
Yes.
three abreast, taking up the whole road. And I was noting as I was driving, because I was literally seeing, I saw hundreds of cyclists, and the only, I mean, it's obviously hard to tell who's a male and female when they've got gear on and a helmet, but I did see one woman, and she was on her own, and she was definitely a woman. So yeah,
Yes.
it's a very we'll think more, because obviously women play golf as well, but yeah, really interesting, and
Yes.
obviously we have
It
generalized, so
is.
yeah, really
It
interesting.
is very interesting. And I think the other thing about men, which we consciously, uh, no, it wasn't to do with men. It was actually when I first started the event series, we used to give awards to the speedy teams. And we'd have different distances and different team configurations, but speed was a factor. And after a couple of years, I just kind of felt like, I'm not sure really about the speedy teams. Do we really care about the speedy teams? Because the most inspiring teams were the ones that were the slowest, because they took the longest. So this was back in the day when our events were 100 kilometres. And sometimes it would take 36 hours to do a 100-kilometre hike. You're hiking all day, all night, and all day. And like the teams that came last was so much more inspiring than the teams that came first. So in the end, we got rid of the race feature and we stopped awarding the speedy teams and we just started awarding inspiring teams. And the inspiring teams are usually those that have overcome some sort of, major life event or adverse health. We get lots of cancer survivors that do our hikes, lots of people dealing with things like MS, various different, really challenging physical problems where they want to prove to themselves that they can still do stuff. And those are the inspiring ones. It doesn't mean we can't be inspired by someone who trains really hard and can run really fast, but other events can do that. And I think that's the other reason that women are much more drawn to our Coastrek adventures because it's really about the journey and staying together as a group and nurturing each other along the way.
And so the podcast I had before you is with Deb Ives, who runs Solo in Style. So she's organising holidays for women who want to go on holiday with on their own, or other groups of women.
Mhm.
And we talked about how interesting this is, that we've all used to have lots of male friends, but as we've got older, we do relish the company of women much more, and
Mm.
it's such an
Mm.
interesting thing that I didn't predict when I was younger. All of my best friends were men, but I have definitely, and Deb said the same, and you've said the same, this
Yeah.
urge to be with other women as we've aged. I'm probably going to
Mm.
upset somebody. I always upset somebody, but I just find the camaraderie of women as I've got older, we seem to understand each other more, and I think the differences
Yes.
between men and women seem to seem to get really amplified as we've aged. And even for those who are happily married, they do want to have time
Yes.
with their women tribe.
Yes, I think you are 100% right because I've got a lovely partner in my life and we've been together for about 2 years. And he's the sweetest, kindest, most loving guy. And, he's taught me to cycle. I've taught him how to rock climb. We have adventure, we have this common adventurous spirit. Um, but the communication is just so frustrating. Just like, and I know it's not his fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just it's partly age. It's partly gender. It's just partly we're genetically different. The way we think is really different. And whereas with my girl gang, it's easy. It's just it's like you don't have to. Oh, you don't have to have all this friction in there. It's just everything. Just yeah. So yeah, it is. It's really interesting how we kind of change. Not saying I wouldn't, that I don't love the company of men because I think it's a nice yin and yang, but sometimes a bit more yin and yin would be better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think as well, because I've thought about this a lot, and I think when I was younger, my relationships with women were a little bit more competitive and a little bit more bitchy. But I think
Yes.
as we've got older, we just don't care about all that anymore.
Yeah.
And
No.
the competitive
Mm,
side with other women, and I don't know, that's,
mm,
we're not, I mean, if we think sort of quite primeval about it, we should be, when we're young, we should be competing for the man that we're going to have babies with and all that stuff. But I think once you get over 40, it all goes out the window. So I think
yeah.
our relationships with other women really change, and it becomes a really
Mm,
interesting dynamic. So if there are people listening who haven't really explored that yet, I think it's something really exciting to explore.
I agree. I agree. Women are awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are awesome. Now, going back to Coast Trek, you set up a partnership. We talked about the charity work, so you set up a partnership with a group called Beyond Blue, and I think they do some great things. Tell us a bit more about Beyond Blue.
Yeah, so we have had three charity partners over the years with the Coast Trek event, and we've been doing it for 16 years now. Our first charity partner was a site restoring charity called the Fred Hollows Foundation. And the Fred Hollows Foundation were famous for working out that you could restore site in a developing nation for $25. So Fred went to Nepal and set up a factory that built these little lenses to heal cataract. So basically, you cut out the damaged cataract, and then you put this little lens in. So we had a very successful 13-year partnership with the Fred Hollows Foundation, and they were our first charity partner. And then we moved to a mental health charity called Beyond Blue. And then we trialed the Heart Foundation. Both of those were fantastic charities and causes to support. But we've ended up going back to Beyond Blue, the mental health charity. And the reason for that is that the mental health need is just growing and growing and growing. It's just like, oh, like, you could get really quite, I guess, quite depressed if you looked at what's happening with our young people and depression rates and suicide rates and all of that. So I think we felt that the mental health space was more needy because it did affect so many people in such great numbers, and because it is getting worse. So I think we're going to be with Beyond Blue for a while. The service that our Coastrekkers support, because we raise millions of dollars every year for them, is a telephone support service, so that for 24 hours a day, every 7 days a week, you can call this telephone support line and talk to somebody, no matter what no matter what you want to talk about. And the rates of use of that telephone support service since it started about 10 years ago have grown astronomically. So we're very proud of that, and we have many coast trekkers who have benefited from that service, or who tell stories of a family member calling that service, and they're having suicidal thoughts, and they call that service, and they just get that person on the end of the phone who can just give them that little bit of hope to hang on and get support. So yeah, it's really cool that you can hike for your own mental health, because we know getting into nature, connecting with others, doing something for a cause, getting fit, all of those things we know are really good for flourishing mental health. So as well as that, you can raise money to help someone else. So it's really a win-win-win.
That's so needed. I have been very aware, the more women's circles I've been going to, I'm I they often share how they're feeling, and there is so many people, not just women, out there who are suffering from mental health issues. And last year on my podcast, I
Mm,
interviewed Laura, one of my dear friends, who does a lot of work for the Samaritans. So in the UK, we have a similar group that's been around for forever. That's where someone's at the end of a phone if someone's feeling suicidal or very depressed.
mm,
So I think something like that is so needed. And
yeah.
before, just changing track a bit, before we go into some of the adventures in a bit more detail, this is a really simple question that I've just thought of, but what's the difference between hiking and walking?
Oh, that's a great question. So, hiking is a type of walking that's more challenging than regular walking. And the reason it is because hiking happens outdoors in nature, and it usually happens on a trail that's it's not a footpath. It's a trail that's got little bumps and rocks and tree roots and things that are in the way. So it's not a curated trail generally. It's more of a more of a challenge underfoot. So generally hiking it's a bit of a mission. So you've got a little sense of purpose. You're going on a hike, whereas walking can just be doing the housework or getting to the bus stop or doing the shopping. Hiking is very much about a sense of purpose around. I'm making it a conscious decision to go into nature and to sort of explore nature with natural kind of surfaces around me. And it often involves all elements. You've got the weather, no matter what the weather is, we say go hike. If it's raining, great, off you go, put your raincoat on. So it has an element of adventure to it, more so than walking does. So I think they're the key things. And it can often be a greater distance. So it's walking on steroids, I'd say, with all the elements of the outdoors and weather and the unexpected things that might come along. If you're in Australia, of course, you're always looking out for snakes and spiders and all those good things. It's a little more challenging than walking.
I absolutely love that. That's Really, really brilliant. Now, you have also set up something called Wild Women on Top, which I love. And every time I've mentioned it to people, they start laughing. So tell us about Wild Women on Top.
I love that people start laughing
They
when you
do.
mention it to them. Because I find I get one of two reactions. They either laugh or they get awkward. And I'm like, when they're awkward, I'm like, don't worry. This is a women's mountain hiking and climbing group, and the reason we called it Wild Women on Top is obviously wild because we like to get into nature, and of course women because we reach out to women. The reason we specifically focus on women is because generally in the outdoor adventure space, women need extra help. That women aren't as inclined to just go for a hike as a man, or if they thought about hiking, they'd be usually too nervous to go on their own. So women need a little bit of extra help, a little bit of extra nurturing to encourage them to go out hiking, particularly if it's in bad weather, or particularly if it involves navigating, or if it's in the dark. Most of our training in the early days did happen in the dark after we put the kids to bed. So it was a very important part of that, reaching out to women. So the on top bit is, well, of course, when you climb to the top of something, the view is always better. So we love the view from on top. And of course, obviously, the on top piece speaks to the empowerment of women and how important it is to challenge yourself in nature, because that's where you build your confidence and your strength and your courage. So, the four words were every word was very carefully curated around that combination. And if you Google it, just so that your listeners know, Google Wild Women on Top. If you miss the on top, you'll get a whole lot of, well, not unexpected, but you'll get you'll get some things you might not want. And if you lose the wild and you just Google women on top, you'll also get a lot of porn. So
Oh, God.
unless you want those things, but if you Google wild women on top, those four words, you will get us. So it's been a good name, and it served us really well for those life changing adventures that we create.
Yeah, some of my work, when I'm Googling things, porn comes up as well. So it's just one of those occupational hazards.
It
I
is.
I absolutely love adventures. I think having adventures and challenges could be something small, but
Yeah.
I think as we age, opening our life and challenging ourselves a little bit more is absolutely brilliant. So I think what you're doing is you're taking people out of their comfort zone. Do we want to spend our elder years sitting at home watching TV and just pottering around in the garden, or do we want to go on these adventures? And I love it. So tell me more. So you do the coast, you do various mountains and things. Anything else you wanted to say about the adventures that you take people on, and where else you've been, and what these are like?
Oh, well, look, I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world to every continent, through with my groups of hiking women, with my Wild Women on Top groups. And I guess where it's evolved now, because now that I'm 65, the byproduct of carrying a 25 kilo pack for 25 years up a lot of mountains and up a lot of hills and stairs is that I'm in a queue, I think, for a knee replacement. So what my bad knees have forced me to do is to find another way to get into nature and to stay connected to community. And I do that now. During COVID, I taught myself to mountain bike. So mountain biking does fulfill all of those needs to get into nature and to connect. And the mountain biking community is wonderful. It's a lot smaller than the hiking community, but it's great. And also rock climbing. And I think if I had to choose one activity that I feel like my body was born to do, it's rock climbing. So it's also one of the few activities that you can improve with age, like a good red wine, Joyce. The older you get, the better you can get at climbing. So it's really cool to have discovered something that I don't get worse at, because most athletic pursuits, where you require power and speed, you sort of just gradually, you're always worse than the last time you tried it. But with rock climbing, it's very technical. It's a real head game. You're stepping outside your comfort zone every time you go up a cliff. So I kind of, I guess, created opportunities to change the things I do as I get older, and bits and pieces of me don't work anymore. I haven't yet manifest that in my business, but I would definitely love to do that, to start broadening our appeal and to entice women to join us as hikers, and then to say, guess what? There's all these other lovely things. You can go kayaking, you can go wild swimming, you can go climb trees, you can go. You've got an incredible woman in the UK. Oh, her name escapes me now, but she's an extreme sleeper. Phoebe Smith, I think her name is, and she does extreme sleeps. So she'll hang herself from the top of a tree, or she'll climb to the top of a mountain, or I think she even hung herself off the top of a cathedral somewhere. Anyway, there's so many. You could be a wild sleeper. There's so many wild things you can do, and let age not be a barrier, because it really shouldn't be. So I think to continue as a 65-year-old woman to evolve and to keep living an adventurous life, and to not let, I'm not ready to let my world shrink yet. And it doesn't mean that I'm not naive enough to think at some point I might, but at this stage, I'm still looking for opportunities to do scary things.
I think for some women, they might feel that their sore knee or their sore hip or whatever is a barrier, and they might think, okay, I'm not going to go and do this because I've got this sore knee. Or and now you mentioned you're on a waiting list for a knee replacement. I've been told by my doctor several times that I need a knee replacement, but
Oh,
we're still doing things, and knees are something in the women I've interviewed for my next book, and you were one of them. um Knees are definitely an issue that many of us
mm,
had. So it's not a barrier, is it? You can work around. So I was during lockdown. I was paddleboarding, but I actually also have a
yep,
years ago I had a broken ankle, and I found that standing still on a paddleboard for more than a couple of hours, my plate in my ankle was really throbbing. So then I started kayaking, and kayaking, so
yeah,
you just sit down. You're just sitting there, it's just
yes,
moving your arms. So there are ways of getting around, and we shouldn't really, if a woman's sitting there and thinking, "Oh, I don't think I can go hiking. I've got this problem or that problem," just have a go. What do you think? Have a go.
yes. Oh, 100%. And I haven't really got into wild swimming yet. I know eventually I might become the wild swimmer. I was in Scotland last year at the Global Wellness Summit, and I had the great privilege of connecting with some of your wild swimming legends. There's a community. What's the name of the lady who's done the book Wild Swimming? She's got a big community over there, and it shares many similar elements to what the Wild Women on Top hiking groups do. The culture of it, the camaraderie, the facing every day, facing that little oar. Every day it's a little oar. Like, it's just fantastic, and you can do that no matter what your knees are doing. So, pending all of that, but for me, it's been an obstacle, but not a barrier. So it just caused me to be going this way and then go, oh, I'm going to go this way now. And I'm so grateful that that my knees have stopped me from hiking, because I've really discovered the real joy of climbing, and it's allowed me more time to invest in climbing, which I'm finding extremely rewarding. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Love that. Obstacle but not a barrier. I'm going to use that line, Di. That's just absolutely brilliant. And on your website, you've said that your adventures have changed your life. They've changed your world to Technicolor. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so enriching, like when I think back to that first adventure, that Mount Aconcagua, climbing that mountain in the Andes. It really did. It completely transformed my life, and enriched it so much, and to have been able to share that with other women, and to be able to share that with my children. and for my children to see that, just because mum's 65, which is pretty old when you're 23, like that's old. Like, and that I'm still, still riding my bike and still, still getting out and about and still climbing and all of those things is, yeah, it really is. I feel very, very privileged to have been able to be on that journey, and to be able to help share it with other women.
It's so brilliant. And I'm going to drop this on you now. This is a quote that you gave me when I interviewed you for my book, and we were talking about exercise and our mental health and everything. And I love this quote. I hope you don't mind me saying it. You
No.
said, "How can I get a quick top up because I'm feeling a bit shit right now? Go for a walk." It's
Oh,
it's perfect. It's so true.
it
Go
works every
outside.
time.
Yeah.
Every single time. And look, I'm currently finishing off my masters. In fact, in 8 weeks I should be finished. I'm doing my masters in lifestyle medicine, and one of the subjects that I did was called exercise as medicine. And in that subject, they explain to you would have seen an infographic. There's an infographic where it shows two pictures of the brain, and it shows the brain while walking and the brain while sedentary. And you see the walking brain, it just lights up like Technicolor. It's got all these colors and all this stuff going on. You're like, oh. But there is also a change that happens in the brain, and it happens within 5 to 10 minutes of moving. Your mood gets lifted. It's called the limbic system in the brain, and it ignites the limbic system. So all you got to do is put your shoes on, walk out the front door, and within 10 minutes, the weight of the world will start to lift, and your brain works differently, and you just start to see things differently, and things that are putting your stomach in knots because for whatever reason, and sometimes we don't know what reason things make us feel a bit yuck, they just disappear. And yeah, it's the reason that many great writers and inventors like Charles Darwin and Michelangelo, so many of the great thinkers, Nietzsche, they all went walking when they wanted to clear their heads and promote their most creative thinking. So I think even Mark Zuckerberg said he won't ever employ someone until he's taken them for a walk. There's something about walking that is that is just it just relaxes you and clears your head and promotes creative thinking. So it really is the best medicine. It's just the greatest thing.
I gave a talk after, but just before a psychologist followed me in a conference a couple of years ago. And I've tried to look for the study. I found similar studies, but not the one he mentioned. But he said there was a study where they looked at certain type of depression, and they did what we call in science a randomized controlled trial. So they had one group where they gave them antidepressants, and the other group they told them to walk for an hour every day outside, and they said that after the study, the people that had been outside to walk had improved mental health compared to those that had the antidepressant. And this
Mm,
culture now that we have, rather than waiting for sickness, trying to fix it with a pill or a potion,
mm,
and
mm,
rather than do that, invest time, quality time
mm.
in ourselves. There's no quick fix. Getting out in nature, putting effort into, as you said, for me, the biggest preventative medicine is looking after our pillars of health, which obviously
Mm.
includes exercise and friendships and community. And I
Yeah.
just get frustrated now that we have this toxic environment, and
Mm.
we need to really relearn how to be healthy. And I think it's such an important preventative medicine that is in our hands. It's up to us whether we do that or not.
Yes, absolutely. It's right there. But most people, they're often too busy, and the culture of waiting till you get sick, then going to the doctor and asking for a pill. It's pretty ingrained. Like shifting that is a very, very big task, and we're doing it one hike at a time. But yeah, it really is it's a big challenge to shift people's thinking and to educate them. In fact, I've been thinking a lot about the women who are leading this menopause research area, and the menopausal health. And there's been this real surge, I think, in women in peri and postmenopause recognizing that they have to learn about this thing. And this is not something that they can just, like you say, wait and get the potion. They're actually really hungry because they know there's something not quite right. And they know they're not getting the answers from their GPs, which again is not anyone's fault. But it's amazing, and there's so many. Like you've got that Dr. Louise Newson in the UK that is just puts out the best content and the best information on Instagram, particularly, where she's constantly talking about the stories of the women and how important it is to educate yourself. And that, these are the practices you've got to do. You've got to get into nature every day. You've got to be physical every day. You've got to eat nutritious and healthy food. And guess what? There's also these things called hormones, which your body used to have and it doesn't anymore. And if you take some of those, it might also help you with, rather than taking an antidepressant, you might find that that helps with a lot of the symptoms. So that need to educate yourself, I think, that's a really important one, and I think it's a growing recognition. Maybe it's only midlife women, but definitely, that they seem to be very keen to learn.
I've looked at the menopause as a lucky event for women because it gives us that wake up call, and our body,
It does.
as it's throwing these various symptoms at us, it's almost like a warning signal saying, okay, you can have these achy limbs and achy joints and tiredness and all these other things. Um, Here's the time to do something about it. Whereas men don't have that.
Mm,
Men just carry through. And
mm,
this is why we've called our
mm.
education program In Tune. And one of the lines is we want women to be in tune with their bodies and
Love
use
that.
this time now to think, okay, I mean, I'm like you, I have exercised my whole life. I was doing Jane Fonda's aerobics back in the
Yeah, I
70s and
love
80s. Yeah, I had the leotards, which we,
it.
when you
Yeah.
were
No
mentioning that,
joints.
I do remember we, for some reason, we wore our leggings and then we put the leotard over the outside. Do you remember that?
That's right. Yes, the
Oh, it,
leotard went on the outside back
yeah,
then.
yeah. Oh my goodness me. Yeah, that was a very anyway, but we don't have to do that anymore. We can wear whatever we want to. But I did want to pick up time, and you mentioned about having to squeeze this in around other caring roles for our families or children, whatever. And I think as women, that's one of the biggest obstacles, besides dodgy knees, that I've
Yes.
heard women say. That this is
Mm,
the most common by a long, long way. I don't have the time, or they say, I get home from
mm.
work, I'm just too tired. I don't have the
Yep.
energy to now
Yeah.
get up and go and do a fitness class or go for a walk or go for a hike.
Yes.
How do we get around the time issue?
Oh, it's a difficult. It's the biggest conundrum. It's a delicate balance, and you're not always going to get right. And I think you teeter on one side or the other. But the only way I've been able to fit it in is to multitask. So I get my 10,000 steps a day in by anytime I'm making a phone call, like a work call or a personal call, I walk. Yeah, I rarely sit. The only time I really sit at my desk and that I'm fully sedentary is when I have to type something, and when I'm fully engaged in, or researching or whatever. I will be up and about to get my steps in. I combine my physical activity with my transport. So I ride my bike to and from work. I live at the top of a hill. And I love that because I've always got to come home up a hill. So by active transport, you can integrate your physical activity. I have um, basically required my staff to walk as part of work. So we have walking meetings, and obviously it's not always possible. And if you've got an agenda and you're doing minutes, it can be a little bit problematic. But you'll find once you start to get your head around it, for a lot of meetings, particularly one-on-one meetings, it's so easy just to we sometimes just walk around in circles around the building. Can't always get outdoors. So I think it's not enough just to think you might go to the gym for an hour 3 times a week. We need to move our bodies every day. and not and that's an essential thing. So it's not easy, but I think it has to be the number one priority. It might mean you have to get up half an hour earlier and do a half an hour walk before work. It might mean you walk in your lunch hour. It might mean that, I used to have a little ritual where I had stairs in my building, and every time I had to go to the toilet, rather than go to the toilet on my level, I went to the toilet 2 levels up. So each time I had to go to the loo, which is probably 3 times a day during the workday, I got 6 sets of stairs. So I guess it's just, but it's a project, like you've got to prioritize it. You've got to go, this is really important. And then on the weekends, then I would make sure that I was just moving all weekends. So we'd always be planning, to do something adventurous on the weekend. But yeah, it's not easy, Joyce. It really isn't easy. The other thing that can help is joining a community where other people are doing it, because we know that environment is one of the. I think 80% of your health is determined by your environmental influences. So you need to connect with communities that are doing those things, like wild swimming or hiking or walking or cycling or something that is physical. Pickleball's become a favorite, I think, of midlife women. So where it's a ritual and something that you know that you're going to do it 2 or 3 times a week, that's not negotiable. You let your family know it's not negotiable. This is why it's not negotiable, because happy wife, happy life. If mum's not happy, then the rest of the tribe can't be happy. But it really is not easy, and it's a daily challenge. So yeah, just put it at the top of your list every day and just do your best. And some days you're going to win, and some days you're not.
And for women our age whose kids have flown the nest or at least becoming independent enough where they don't need us so much, I really hear a lot about loneliness setting in. So again,
Mm,
just get there. There are so great communities out there, and
yeah.
and the whole issue about tiredness, I think it is a catch 22, because the more active you are, the more energy you have. And people don't believe that. They say,
Yes.
oh no, you're going to be really tired after doing that. But then you're more energized. So
You
it
are
is a
more
win-win.
energized. It's
So
such a win-win. Yeah, yes. And it's swapping. It's like when you're trying to get your diet, when you're trying to improve your diet, they talk about food swaps, which can be a great thing. I think it's a similar thing. Instead of going to the pub and sitting down, um, just go for a walk. Like
yeah.
get your girlfriend and go for a walk. Instead of going out for a big meal when you're going to sit down for 3 hours, take a picnic outside. I mean, you might only have to walk 500 meters, but like you're out there and you're a lot more physical than you are if you're sitting down. So, if you can combine social connection with physical activity, then to me that's just like the perfect combination, because it's more fun, and you're more likely to do it more often because it's got that sense, that camaraderie that is one of the core pillars of our mental health. So, yeah.
I'm with you. It's in my view, it's non-negotiable. We've just got to do
Yep.
it. Now, another quote you
Mm.
gave me for the book. I think being creative is really really important. I think I think everyone benefits mental health wise, so in so many ways, from being creative. And you gave me a great quote. You said, I become the most creative when I'm hiking or when I'm riding my bike. I have this flush of creativity. I have this flush of problem
Mm.
solving. And the problem solving as well.
Mm.
I've heard so many people, and I definitely, when I'm running or just out walking, things come into my head, and ideas and that creativity. I totally agree. I love that comment from you. I think that's so inspiring. So it just amplifies all the positive things about life, doesn't it? It's
Mm.
not just what you're doing to your body. It's so important
Yes,
for all of
yes,
those, opening your brain.
it is. It really is a key pillar of mental health, physical activity. And I think the trick is to find a physical activity that you enjoy. If you try something and it's not, like it's just not working for you, then just keep looking, because it really should be enjoyable. And I think that's also why women are so drawn to hiking, because it's the social aspect of it. There would be rarely a night hike that I did with my community of wild women, where I didn't have someone solve every problem. Wouldn't matter what problem I had that day, there would be someone with a great suggestion around. Have you tried this? Yeah, it really is that brainstorming opportunity to just get it out of your system and yeah, solve many problems in the one activity.
It's so perfect. Really, really perfect. So we're coming to the end, and I've called this podcast "Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This?" So, Di, what have people said this to you, and what did they say?
Hang on. So why didn't anyone tell me this?
Yeah,
In relation to the health benefits of
yeah,
hiking, you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, maybe, yeah, whatever, anything they've said to you in your experience.
Oh, what things come into my life when I had that thought? Why didn't anyone tell me this? The one that comes to my mind is, why didn't anyone tell me that experiencing anxiety for the first time in my life in my mid 50s might be related to my hormones? Like that was just, it's been the strangest thing because I never experienced anxiety as a young woman. And then in my early 50s, I just started to just get nervous about stuff and like get this knot in my stomach with stuff. And then one time I had a full panic attack and I didn't label it as that. I didn't label it as anxiety and I didn't label it as a panic attack. It was 5 years later when I was confiding in my daughter and she said, Mum, that's a panic attack. How could you not have known? Like, so I didn't have any insight to be able to work out what it was and why I was getting it now. So I think that was I wished, really wished I'd known that. So I have since started taking some of the bioidentical hormones, and it's early days because I've only really just started in the last 6 to 12 months. And I'm not sure, it hasn't suddenly taken away my anxiety, but I'm fully optimistic that it will be just part of a kit of tools to just help me, I guess, not worry about stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Di, the last questions. I'm really excited, and I did ask you this for the book. You can say something totally different. What makes you happy, and where is your happy place?
Oh, what makes me happy is rock climbing, mountain biking, hiking, being in nature with friends. And if I don't get to do that every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes, I really struggle with my mood. So yeah, physical activity in nature, it has to be part of every day because otherwise I'm grumpy.
That's great advice to everybody, I think. And the final question: what advice would you give your younger self?
I think the advice I'd give my younger self is life is long and there's going to be so many wonderful things ahead, and just go and embrace every opportunity that ever comes your way, and don't ever make a decision to not do something because of fear. I think that's yeah.
I think that's a really great message to some of the women who are listening to this who are thinking, "Oh, I can't do
Mm,
that." I have, and they have a
mm,
fear of an adventure or of a challenge.
mm.
And I would say to them, just try it. Just try anything.
Yes,
Just try it.
yes. Because the only way to overcome the fear is to try it, and you're going to learn something about yourself, and you might just like it. In fact, we have a saying in climbing and mountain biking as well. We talk about type B fun, and type B fun is where you're so terrified in the middle of the activity that you're actually not having fun. It's like, this is really not fun. I'm terrified. And then when it's over and you got through it and you're at the other side and you're having a cup of tea at the end or whatever, and you're reflecting on it, you go, gee, that was great, wasn't it? That was so fun. But actually, at the time, it's not fun. So I just want to embrace as much of that type B fun as possible, because I think that gives you a richer life. It's like that, having a life wish, just to have more fun.
Have more fun. And I must tell you that I don't think I've said this before, but not on live things, but when we're wild swimming, I can tell you that the first minute is painful and it's definitely not fun. As and we're often getting in, especially not so much now. The water temperature in the UK is really warming up rapidly, but a few weeks ago when it was under 10 degrees C, uh, we would often say, "What are we doing? Why are we here doing this? Why are we sitting at home watching Netflix?" But we know that after that minute or so, sometimes a bit longer if it's cold, that the happy hormones will start to kick in. And we also very much know that afterwards we will feel fantastic, physically and mentally
Yep.
fantastic.
Yes, that's the type B fun.
Yes, I love that. Type B fun. Now I've got a word for it. Fantastic. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Di.
type B fun. Yeah,
um,
yeah, no, you definitely want more of that.
yeah. So push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
If this podcast has motivated you, try and find some people to go and have some adventures with. I do wonder, as you were talking, I wonder, we've got beautiful coastline around the UK and we try and swim there a lot. I'm sure, I hope, I don't know if there are some coastal hiking groups around the UK. I have done something called the Mighty Hike with Macmillan Cancer Research, and
Mhm.
they do many hikes for to raise money for cancer. And I have done the Norfolk coastal route. I've done it a couple of times, and I really loved it. It's a stunning, and there's thousands of people. And it was one time I did it with a friend, and one time I did it alone. It's an amazing thing to do. So if people do want to go on some in the UK, there are the Macmillan Cancer Trust do these big walks. You definitely need to train. The only trouble with the one I was doing, there was about 3 miles of shingle. So on the beach where it was lots. So
Oh,
and it was quite. It's in the first 10 miles, and the first year I didn't have a dodgy knee, and the second year I had a dodgy knee, and that was really
oh.
hard. So definitely know your limits, try things, but listen to
Mm.
your body as well, and get out there and
Mm.
enjoy life. Di, thank you so
Yes,
much.
absolutely.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. You're so inspiring. I had to have you on when I hadn't met you in person, but when I interviewed you for my book, I was so bowled over by all the wonderful things you said and how you've lived your life, and it's really motivational and inspiring for everybody, not just women, but everyone to get out there and have an adventure. So thank you so much for your chat today.
Thank you, Joyce.